Welcome to another edition of Pain and the Purpose podcast, the Big Bruh, Little Bruh edition.
What's
Hey, you
happening?
already know what it is. I got Big Bruh sitting to my right, and I'm sure this is going to be an awesome podcast episode.
I appreciate that, bro. Thanks for having me back
Yeah,
as a
hey,
guest.
trying to do this once a month.
Yeah,
Get these
yeah.
people what they need.
No, for sure. Good stuff, man. And we was talking off camera, and I feel like you got a pretty good subject matter you want to share today, man. So I'm here for it, bro.
Yeah, today's topic is building resilience, and particularly building resilience after the loss of a loved one. What's your thoughts on that?
You know, it's when I hear the word resilience, you know, I've had this conversation before, obviously, in the emotional intelligence realm. And so I like to frame it as like emotional resilience.
Okay.
Because the thing about being resilient or not being able to practice resilience, it'd be because of the way you feel about the thing that you're trying to get through, right? You're trying to overcome an unwanted feeling, an unwanted thought, an unwanted situation, and you can't get on the other side of it based on the way you feel. Man, it's funny. I was having a conversation coming to see you this morning with a friend of mine who her guy just passed away. And he was struggling, you know, with some things, and she was just, you know, telling me how hard it was, and you know how she was having these moments, and you know, she said that he used to cook for her all the time, and so she found herself in a grocery store, not really knowing exactly what to get, right? So it was weighing on her, and so we was having some conversation about, you know, how to get through this, what's next, and it made me think about like our conversation that we're talking about resilience and how do you be resilient? It's easy to say. I have my thoughts, but I know you've been kind of working on some signature ways of making it happen. If you can give one particular tip on resilience, like what would you say?
So I would say that first of all, I started off by reframing what resilience means to me.
What does reframing mean?
So the textbook definition of resilience say the ability to bounce back after an adversity or a difficult experience. I changed it to say grow through. I don't want to bounce back, and it's impossible to bounce back after you lose a loved one. You'll never be the same, but you definitely need to grow through that process. And so I got so many ways that I've learned to do that, but I will go with, if I had to pick one. So I'm battling with keeping it in perspective or changing my beliefs, right? Or challenging my beliefs.
So go back to perspective, because they both are good. So if you say you're battling between the two, but let's just break them both down. So keeping it in perspective. How do I apply that? I'm stuck with something. I lost someone, or I'm having a tough time in life, and I'm thinking about this podcast. And you like the brothers was talking about being resilient. And he had two options. He said one was keeping it in perspective. What does that mean? How do I keep it in perspective?
When I lost NANAH, right, it rocked me, and it had me in a state of chaos and confusion because I just didn't know what to do or what was, and it get kind of hazy because you want to control everything, but then you can't. So putting it in perspective for me simply meant taking a step back from the situation and understanding what I can control and what I couldn't control in that moment, as well as understanding or coming to the understanding, growing into the understanding that although I lost my child, NANAH, she left me a grandson. When it first happened, me and you had a conversation about the fact that I did stop my day the day before and made space and gave her opportunity to come and share an hour and a half with me, 2 hours, where we had a heartfelt conversation, and I was able to get a lot of things out, and she was able to get a lot of things out. So taking those moments and making those moments bigger than the final moment, and sort of say, and understanding that that situation can never be undone. But if I build my resilience, I'll be able to kind of like counteract the negative effects of me losing my child. Because when you lose somebody, especially of that magnitude, I had to understand that my grief process was normal. A lot of people.
That's perspective.
That's perspective. That's part of the perspective is you get so bombarded with so many different people's opinion of grief and how grief's supposed to go. And I put it in perspective. Grief is not a process or a cycle. Grief is a journey. You're going to be on this journey for the rest of your life. And the intensity of the intensity of the pain that you feel will be directly connected to the intensity of the love that you shared. So once I began to realize that and take myself out of this cycle or out of this process and just understand that grief is a journey and it has no destination. Yes, some people do come to terms with losing a loved one. I'm probably not going to be one of those people, and that's okay, right? Where some people will say that, nah, you have to do this, you have to do that. And then me and you, we've had a couple of situations about accept and acknowledge, right? And they vaguely mean the same thing, but for me, saying I acknowledge it resonates better for me, and that's okay. And I don't have to defend that to nobody. But when someone first loses someone that they love, we find ourselves being surrounded with people who mean well. They're trying to help, but they just be saying the wrong things.
So you're right. And so when you're thinking about resilience, to get through the conversation that other people are having with you, to get through the situation itself, to be able to cope and manage the overwhelming emotions that come with that, changing your perspective or
changing the narrative
or creating another perspective, another way to look at the situation, helps you overcome that unwanted thought, unwanted emotion about this thing that you're experiencing, so you can move, so you can be here another day.
So I could be here another day, and understanding that, and it's just not for me, this is for anybody that's going through the loss of a loved one. Your perspective is valid, and it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. It only has to make sense to you. And humans have a tendency of trying to make you see things their way, as if that's the only way. And
projection
biases, right?
Yeah. And let me add, if I may, with the perspective, we like to frame it as the power of perspective, right? I think it's also very important to remember that another perspective always exists.
Definitely.
Right? That's why, I say emotional resilience, I say emotional discernment. It's hard because the perspective that you gain, whether you gain it early in the process or later, it was always there.
Correct.
Right? And so for me, it helps me whenever I'm dealing with any difficult situation, thinking about there's a universal law called the law of opposites, right? Or the law of polarity, which it would simply suggest it's a universe law that it's time tested, right? If there's an inside,
It's outside.
right? If you walk a mile that way,
You got to walk a mile
you're only
back.
getting back if you walk a mile this way, right? Which means that if there's good, then it
I'm
has to
lazy.
be
I'll get a
bad.
ride.
But it's still gonna be a mile,
It's
whether
still
you
gonna be a
walk,
mile.
jog, or swim, right?
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that that means if there's good,
There's definitely evil.
there has to be evil or bad. And so whenever I'm struggling with something, so if I'm in a bad space, bad mood, there's something good on the other side. Whether I agree with it, whether I believe in it, it's there. And
Yes.
it's how I feel and process it will determine how soon I can, you know what I'm
Can
saying?
get
I
through
can
it.
get to that and see that, and vice versa. Conversely, right? We're having such a good moment, but in this moment right now, something bad is really happening to somebody else, right?
Correct.
And we are not, and we never know when that next thing is happening to us. But so not to, that's not to live in fear. It's to understand that as long as we are participating in this thing called life, no one's exempt from it, and
No
that
one's
helps
exempt.
with when we're talking about resilience, putting things in perspective. I think factoring all of those things in, if one is open to that, can certainly help ease the pain, right? We're just trying to ease it a little bit so you
Just
can get some momentum, so you can
exactly.
remember that you know there's still things that you can be grateful for and not be guilty, because you can still smile, you can still love, you can still be loved even when tragedy has just struck, and it's hard. But
Definitely,
that's why we're
definitely
talking about
are.
resilience.
And one of the key points of my perspective if I had to change is just because I'm a good person doesn't mean bad things can happen to me in my life.
Does it mean that they can't or they can?
Can't.
Oh, for sure.
Because I was under the, like, not under the impression, but
Yeah, come on.
I felt like I'm such a good person. I help so many people.
Yeah,
I do this, I
that's
do
good.
that. I am so available for people. How can my baby
Yeah, that's
get
good.
taken away from me when I've saved so many other kids? And so that was one of the major perspectives that I had to wrestle with and come to terms with, that even though I'm a good person and I do good things in the world, I'm still not immune from the bad things or the realities of life.
Yeah, that's
And so, and then we talked, and I think I hit you with left field when I told you this, and I said, the number one job of a father is to provide and protect. And in that moment, I couldn't protect my child. And that was a perspective, right? And we had several conversations about it. I had conversations with it with a couple of other friends. And although I haven't quite released it yet, I now understand that I wasn't able to. Like, it wasn't nothing I could do in that moment. Like, for lack of a better term, people say it was written. I don't really go with that, but for the right now, since I don't have any better words, that's what I have to come to terms with, right? So even in the midst of me building my resilience and me learning so much about resilience and teaching resilience, I always make it a point to tell people that it's an ongoing process. You will never get it down packed, and it's another thing with no destination, and you'll always be wrestling with something. But part of the resilience is being able to wrestle with it and carry on.
yeah, good. And I think that's a good segue to your second point. So your first way of managing resilience was the power perspective, being able to take on another view, another perspective, another side, another way of looking at a situation that's so difficult, whether it's death, whether it's finances, whether it's relationships, whatever the thing that's in the pit of your stomach. the way to manage it through resilience, one way could be taken on a power perspective. Then you also mentioned your beliefs and
Changing my
changing your
beliefs.
beliefs, and I want to amplify that because those are good. Those are two good ways to do it, and I want to go back to what you were just saying about your belief, right? About how you should be thinking about that. You said it's slowly changing. So let's talk about the beliefs that you are holding about any part of the situation, any part of this situation or any situation. When you have a belief, how do you start to change your belief, or how do you?
Well, for me, I had to go get more information. I had to seek out the information, right? Because I also believe that I'm only as good as the information I know. So I immediately started ordering books on grieving parents or how to grieve or how to deal with trauma so I can begin to read and learn other people's story and see how they got through it. So everything don't apply to everybody,
Right.
but if I can just get one thing out of each book, I could, you know, keep growing through my process. So part of me changing my belief is going back to the grief cycle or the grief process is I now incorporate my laughter and my joy as part of my grief process or my grief
That's
journey.
good. That's good. Say it one more time, like and tell us more about that because that's good to be able to incorporate that.
So all of the stuff that I've read about grief only focuses on the negative aspects of it. I believe that we should incorporate the joy, the happiness, the laughter. All that should be a part of my grief journey as well. Just because I'm laughing. So I got the saying that I created. I had to learn how to cry without feeling weak and laugh without feeling guilty. Right? Because when you lose somebody, it's hard to laugh without feeling guilty.
Yeah.
Because I'm missing my baby. I'm missing my daughter. Like, so how can I laugh? And that's the one thing that we did together all the time was laugh. So, and that wasn't an immediate, like we're 16 months removed from it now, right? So the things that I'm talking about, I don't expect anybody to do within the first 3 to 4 weeks. Like, if they can, fine.
But you can,
Yeah, but if they
if you
can,
have advanced knowledge, right? So by listening to this podcast, you may be 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 minutes into it, and if you believe us, right, because you're sharing your experience,
Yes.
to say, I'm not just saying this because I read it in a book. Books bring additional information, but you're dealing with this now.
Firsthand.
Right? We lost her mother a couple of months ago, right, which is a whole nother conversation. We lose friends all the time, right, to the violent streets, right? Death is around all of us, right? It's why things is a relevant conversation. So one could shorten their learning
They definitely
process
could
by
shorten it.
if they believe what we're saying to be true. That's why we share the information because we may be hitting somebody at the right time. And it's like if you could take on the power perspective, right? Because that perspective exists, whether you're ready for it or not. It could help you grow through it a little bit more sooner or with a little bit more flow or a little bit more understanding. And then your beliefs, and I know I hijacked the mic a little bit, but I wanted to frame it because you also talked about framing.
Yes.
And so, because framing creates focus. So by taking these elements and reframing it around what you're going through could help you grow through. I like the way you said that. Grow through resilience, right? Grow through the grieving process and not try to get over it. And when it comes to beliefs are something that have been downloaded to us.
Most definitely.
Right? So we're not necessarily, I don't believe that we're born with beliefs, right? There may be some things that are deep planted in our subconscious for the journey of why we were brought here in the first place. But for the most part, as you are growing, people are going, we don't do this, we do that.
Yes.
You are this, you are not that. This is how we handle this. And you grow into this space, and that becomes how you process things. And so when you talk about changing beliefs, you have to realize that a lot of our beliefs don't belong to us.
Most
And a lot of
definitely.
our beliefs are old beliefs that can be replaced with new beliefs, which is the changing of perspective and how you look at the situation that allows you to laugh without feeling guilty. You know what I'm saying? And what was the other one?
Cry without feeling weak.
And cry without feeling weak. That's a new belief now,
Yes.
right? So now with that new belief, you're able to do it and share it, because you could just be doing it on your own. Not only do you do it, you share it, and you're demonstrating to others that it's okay, and that you're not. This is not, and no level of death is to be minimized. But I think that every parent would agree. You know what I'm saying? That it gets pretty high on the ranking level when your child, when you outlive your child and your child is taken from you. I like the perspective you saying lost, but she actually was taken from us, right?
Yes.
And so, and for you to be strong and resilient, like, you inspire me. You know what I'm saying? Because, of course I worried about you and I'm always concerned, but when I see you, you like, what's up, bro? You got the big smile, and I know what's going on the inside, right? But you help it, you make it easier for me,
Yeah.
right? Like when I'm pulling up, I don't feel like, it's a sad moment. I know inside there's sadness, but you don't live with that sad moment. You're not leading with that, which is why you still attract people. You're light. People still are attracted to you, even though things happen to you. They're still coming to you for guidance, for
Guidance.
whatever. So that to me is powerful, and I just cannot let that go by without acknowledging. You know what I'm saying?
And
Like, what
I
you're doing is
I
powerful, bro.
appreciate
You know what
that.
I'm saying? For sure.
I appreciate that. That so at the end of my statement, that was sort of like a permission, sort of say, to, because the grief process is individual, and so everybody gonna be on their own timeline, and I don't want people to believe that they have to do it, because that's part of the stigma around grief is you have so much time to do X, Y, and Z, and I want to remove that stigma. That's why I mentioned that we've been at it for 16 months, and I don't expect nobody to do it in 3 weeks,
Facts.
because I don't want nobody to put no pressure on themselves to feel like they have to conduct themselves a certain way, because that's another part of the narrative that's already out there. And part of my narrative and my belief is you get to take as long or as fast as you want to. If you feel like you can do it in a day, knock yourself out. If it take you 10 years, knock yourself out. But just continue to grow through the process. That's the, and another belief that I had to change was, and me and Lil Darren talked about this, allowing the system to do their job. Just release it and let the system do their job.
Or do what they do.
Or do what they do.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right, yeah.
But I can't hold that. Because it creates
Tension.
anxiety, tension, anger, and that's how you get a hole in the bathroom door.
Yeah, for sure. Our brother Steve Bacon said something to me one time. He said, we got to be mindful of useless thoughts or unuseful thoughts. Sometimes we have thoughts and they're unuseful, right?
Yeah.
They're serving us no purpose, and they lead us, to destruction. They lead us to take action on something that really was useless, And so I think when you're thinking about the term thought management, most people don't understand that you can think about what you're thinking about.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a skill, it's an art, it's a science, it's something that you don't have to let your thoughts just run over you. You can actually think about it and make shifts and do things different. And we see what happens when we don't.
Yeah,
Right.
we see what happens when we don't. I punch holes in doors
Right.
and have to go buy a punching bag. But I also
Don't just skip over that though. I mean, if you're gonna bring it up, you punch the door
because part of the grief process, it creates an extreme amount of anger and frustration, and me not having an outlet. I punched a hole in the door, so I bought an outlet. So that's another thing that I had to grow through. So I try.
Let me tap in. I gotta tap in. This is gonna be good. This
is gonna be good.
Yeah, you may edit it. I don't know, but
I ain't gonna edit nothing. I don't edit.
But as your brother, because I've been your brother your whole life, right? And I only lived 3 years without you, so our whole life we've been together. That is a belief that you've always had to destroy something when you get extremely angry, because you done tore up a lot of shit growing up. No, I'm just saying, right? So you talk about resilience. Am I lying?
No.
Right? So when we talk about resilience, and you talked about the power of perspective and changing your belief. Now here's a teaching. Here's a big brother moment, right? You got to change your belief. Buying a punching bag was cool. That's another way, but you just set it up for when it happened again, right? But the belief, this is good, of that you must destroy something when you get extremely angry is the one that you need to change.
Got it. I'll start working on that.
You got it, bro. All right.
So, well,
I mean, I think you dropped the mic on that one right there. You know.
Well, y'all have just witnessed me give big bro, little bro teachable moments. This is what happens when the cameras is not on, and I just like to take the time to say, I love you, I appreciate you, and this situation of losing NANAH and our mama has definitely made us closer.
Yes, sir.
And so, with that being said, hey, you have now just watched another edition of Pain and the Purpose podcast with Big Bro, Little Bro.
Yes, indeed.
Have a blessed and stress-free day because you definitely deserve it. We love y'all. Peace.